It's time for Where You Live with Gene and Tony, the show that's all about owning, buying, selling, renting, and association management. If it involves a home, we'll talk about it. Here's your chance to get your homeowner questions answered. From the Concierge Landscape Studios, here's Gene and Tony.
Needed the shelter of someone's arms, and there you were. Needed someone to understand my ups and downs.
Welcome to Where You Live with Gene and Tony. I'm Gene Sullivan.
And I'm Tony Crockett. What's going on today, Gene?
Well, today, let's see. Let's call it Harassment Saturday.
Do we have to?
I think a lot of the topics and the stories that we're covering here today kind of goes along that theme of being harassed, people that are dealing with bullies.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah. And how do you deal with it? We're going to deal with another story a little bit later, too, where you, of course, can get injunction relief and get a restraining order. And we're going to talk about the pros and cons. Does that work? Are there things that that can perfectly cover dealing with a bully in any situation? We'll talk about it.
Okay.
And so we will begin, like always, with our first segment, Property Management in the News. Property Management in the News is brought to you by Pest Control Services. When you need to get rid of unwanted pests in your home or rental property, who do you call? You want to call the responsive, professional person that you find in Greg Keener and Pest Control Services. The phone number 952-894-9748, Pest Control Services. Our first story was from the front page, no less, of the Minneapolis Star-Tribune on Tuesday, earlier this week. And very top of the page, reoccurring nightmare on Mean Street. And it's talking about a White Bear Lake family who has endured harassment from a neighbor across the street. And apparently this family, they have a couple of smaller children, and they are subjected to, it seems like on a weekly basis, signs that are placed in the yard of the neighbor, making a comment about these children's mother. She will yell across. She will yell across the street at different times of the day, just yelling and just being mean and vicious. Now, of course, you wonder. There's always two sides to every story, right?
Right.
What was it that seemed to
set
this off?
Yeah.
And when you read the story, did you find anything?
No. In fact, she's been brought to court more than once, it sounded like. Police have been involved. Criminal charges were filed. And never once has she tried to offer any kind of explanation as to why she's harassing her neighbor.
Yeah, she's always been silent on the matter, right?
And other neighbors have had problems with her, too. She has a neighbor next to her who's filed a restraining order. Another neighbor moved because of her. So right now she's targeting this family across the street, but it sounds like she always has somebody in her sights, don't you think?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
There are some people that just seem to be that way, that they're not happy unless they're miserable.
It's also a symptom of a mental illness. This kind of behavior, this kind of inexplicable hostility. And I was kind of surprised to see that no court has ever required a psychiatric evaluation, but maybe that's still to come.
And this woman, it sounds like, we don't know, but it sounds like she might be a single parent.
I think it does say she is a single parent.
Okay, and she has a couple children, or one child anyway, herself?
I remember one daughter being mentioned.
Okay.
Because the daughter used to play with the girls across the street, and somehow things have gone horribly wrong.
Yeah, and if it were just the situation of just one family, you could possibly say, hey, there's something.
Two sides to this.
There's two sides to the story, but yeah, you're right. You have the next door neighbor to this woman who says the same thing. Another home down the street is saying the same thing. How do you deal with something like
Well, now, in this case, she's been charged criminally and civilly, it appears. So the neighbors have tried to take legal steps and legal action to get the harassment started. But as of, it sounds like last winter, it was still going on. Yeah. She's scheduled to be back in court this week and for violating probation in connection with the last charges. So it's still ongoing, it sounds like. And it sounds like the legal steps have not stopped the problem.
Okay. Well, what do you think of this? You know, there was a quote, a couple interesting quotes from a police officer, I think it was Police Chief Lynn Banks, who said, even bullies can control their behavior, he said. He said the charges are piling up against this woman, who is an executive assistant at the Metropolitan Council. You know, sometimes I think people think of people who are just yelling and vulgar and as being people that are either low class or out a job. That's not the case. That's not.
It's hard to imagine them functioning in normal society. Yeah. So yeah, I would say it's hard to imagine them operating in a place of business.
But this is interesting. Now, sometimes it's just hyperbole, and you know,
sure.
And people will always speak this way. But the police chief said, "In my 35 years as a police officer, I have never met or heard of anybody who is so persistent in their negative behavior toward their neighbors or anyone." And, you know, like I said, people will always speak in hyperbole.
Yeah.
Everyone will say, oh, this is the worst, this is the best.
Sure.
And you're getting the idea they're just trying to convey. But in 35 years, I bet this police chief has probably seen a few things.
Yeah, that's right. And it might be hyperbole a little, but this is really goes beyond the pale, doesn't it?
Well, let me ask you this question, because in this whole discussion about bullies, or when we talk about people having to deal with difficult neighbors, whether it's a single-family community like this or a homeowner association, is it just me, or does it truly seem that we're getting to a point in our society where it seems like people are more easily ticked off and angry and just upset? You know,
I don't know, Gene. It's hard for me to tell, because I know as I get older, I'm getting crankier. So my world, I'd have to say that's true. I'm getting crankier in my old age. I don't know. It seems like generally that's true too. We talk about this all the time. Yeah. People's expectations are kind of out of whack. We all have this idea that things should happen immediately. We all can harbor this idea that if I don't get what I want, somebody else had better fix that for me. We've talked about that a lot. So that all sounds pretty cranky, doesn't it? Yeah, but to me, it just seems to be that there is a less of less civility. Well, and it seems like people have no patience for a process either. Do you think, you try and explain there's a process to this, and people don't have any patience?
People are very impatient.
Yeah,
yes,
they are.
They are. People are very impatient, and we always talk about people wanting what they want when they want it.
That's right. What do you think about these poor people that have been suffering this kind of abuse?
Well, there's a couple of things that you can do. I mean, one is you could go over and pop someone like this in the nose.
Don't make me angry. You wouldn't like me when I'm angry. Yeah.
I think even the most patient person would have come to that feeling in this situation.
Yeah. And we talked about this a little bit before the show, and I've wondered, yes, I'm kind of musing, but I'm just wondering if maybe we need to shrug aside this PC world that we're in of zero tolerance of everything, and maybe sometimes what a good bully needs is just to push back. Is
a pop in the nose.
A pop, something.
Yeah,
but I'm not advocating violence, and I'm not a violent person.
I know you're not a violent person, and I certainly can empathize with the impulse.
Yes, but there's got to be something that you can do. People are really concerned because some of the discourse that we've heard from people over and over again has been some people say, call the police, right?
Sure.
You need to call the police
Sure.
each and every instance. And there are other people say, no, don't call the police because they won't help. And they said that they've been told the police is not interested.
They don't want to get involved.
Interested in getting involved.
Yeah.
So what is right? Well, we're going to discuss that, folks, a little bit more. We've got more information that we're going to take a look at when we come back after these messages. And we're going to ask, what are the options that are open to a normal individual who wants to deal with a difficult bully in their neighborhood? Well, we're going to tackle that after these messages.